Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships Legends. My name is Spartan Elite 43 and tonight we are back in the New Orleans. Now this is a ship I don't play very often because I haven't had to play it for a long time. I have the Balti. But some of you have been asking for it. And not just for like recently, though it has been recently that I've been seeing it pop up more and more. But there's been a lot of people ask over the years, Spartan, can you please show us what we should do with the New Orleans? So I jumped into New Orleans and I was like, sure, let's give this thing a try. Now the first thing I'm going to tell you right now is this thing feels way better than I remember. Alright, like when I played this thing a long time ago, it was okay, but it did not feel as responsive as it does now. So, I don't know. I think it's been buffed over the years, but I could be just wrong. It could just be the fact that I'm used to other ships that are a little bit slower and stuff. This thing is fantastic. Like, I mean, just look at the first shot. 12,000 damage on a Rook. Alright? First of all, first thing you need to know about American heavy cruisers, your #1 ammo of choice should be armor piercing. Period. End of story. You should not be spamming HE out of American heavy cruisers unless it's got the name Wichita. Other than that, use the armor piercing. Yes, you can use the HE in certain circumstances. If you got bow tanking battleships, you want to set some fires, especially if you already know that they've damage conned or something like that. But most of the time, you want to take advantage of the fantastic armor piercing. Now, there are two commanders you need to be knowing about if you're going to play the American heavy cruisers. One of them is the free-to-play commander Norman Scott. That is your base model, armor-piercing build, or reload build, or accuracy build, whichever way you want to call it, cruiser commander for the U.S. Okay? Fantastic. He is amazing. If you do not have any of the pay-to-win, aka premium commanders, then you're not going to go wrong with Norman Scott. He's the guy that I used for a very, 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 very long time, up until we got the good old-fashioned Baltimore from Azure Lane. Azure Lane Baltimore has some funny skills that make American heavy cruisers even more ridiculous when it comes to killing cruisers. But that being said, at Tier 6 you don't really need the advantage of Azure Lane Baltimore. So we're just running Norman Scott, just a good old-fashioned Norman Scott, I believe. I could be wrong. Maybe I was running Azure Lane Baltimore in this particular game, but it doesn't really matter because it's basically the same exact build. You're going for armor piercing and reload. That is the two things that you want on your American heavy cruisers. I believe with this thing built the way it is currently, we have just over a 10-second reload. We have been spawned on the right side of the map. We had a Queen Elizabeth who died within seconds, which is tragedy. On a whole other level. I don't understand how that Queen Elizabeth died so fast, but you can see that I am begging my carrier player to help me out here. For his own sake, like, I'm going to survive as long as possible. Don't get me wrong. Like, I understand that I can disengage when I need to. I can, you know, do what I gotta do to survive, but it's in this carrier's best interest to start helping the side that is the weak side with anything, at least minimum, spotting. Just spot for me, my guy. I will help you. And you can see I am begging. Like, at this point, I'm like, okay, I got to get into chat and tell this carrier, hey, get on the clock, my dude. You're about to get overrun by half of the enemy team. Maybe now would be a good time to start assisting the guy who is asking for your support. Just a thought. But carrier players be carrier players. Am I right, folks? Anyway, we are going to wait. The carrier player is going to wake up and start helping spot this side, which will give us a little bit of time. But we're going to showcase the strength and the weakness of the ship during this battle. And the second thing you need to know is not just that you should be shooting AP 90% of the time, but you also need to keep your distance when there are battleships involved. Okay? If you're too close to battleships, you're probably not going to have a good time. Why? Because they overmatch everything on your ship. You are not a Baltimore yet, okay? You may be a Baltimore when you grow up, but currently you are not. And the biggest downfall of that is the fact that you do not have the armor to take battleship caliber shells very well. Okay? They just pretty much go straight through and murder your face hole. Okay? Not an ideal situation. I think we can all agree. That being said, you can see I am focusing the Rook because I've been doing the most damage to him, but there are cruisers out here too. Now, I don't really focus the cruiser too much just because, A, I'm getting so much damage off the Rook that I want to keep that going. That's one less battleship to shoot at me. Cruisers are not a threat to me, period. If you're an American heavy cruiser, you have such an advantage when it comes to a gunfight with a cruiser. It is stupid, all right? Like, it is actually stupid. Now, sure, we got a Pensacola out here. We got a Laga out here. Both of those fantastic heavy cruisers. One of them American heavy cruiser. So you know that they could be very, very nasty to you. But honestly, it's not the cruisers keeping me at bay here. I'm having to get jiggy with it, sure. But that brings me to the next point of the New Orleans. The New Orleans has a fantastic rudder shift. So use it. Mid-range, keep your distance. Get jiggy with it, folks. Alright? It's that simple. Dodge. Turn, duck, dodge, dive, and weave. Whatever you want to call it. If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. Or in this case, armor piercing and high explosive. Preferably. But the next thing you need to learn is when to use your concealment. Alright? It is not beneficial to constantly be getting shot at. Sometimes you need to change your strategy, go dark, hold your fire, relocate just a little bit to get those guys looking at somebody else, and then re-engage, and that is where these things absolutely shine. Because as soon as these guys start looking the other way, Pensacola's got a terrible turret traverse, right? That thing takes like 40 seconds to turn the turrets. So as soon as it starts looking somewhere else, like, we can absolutely start raining heck on that man, right? Like, no problem. I don't want to pick on the Gneisno because of everything that's over there. The Gneisno's probably the one who's going to get the lucky shot that absolutely yeets me. I know it sounds stupid, but it's much easier to dodge ships that are predictable, alright? The Gneisno is so inaccurate 99% of the time that it makes it very difficult for me to dodge. But this Laga actually gets predicted pretty hard here. Like, I anticipated, like, he shot AP initially, and then when I went broadside, it was perfectly timed because he had switched to AG. Now, he has shown that he has the ability to turn on the AP when he needs to, so we got to be careful. And you can see he fires HE once again, but now he goes full broadside, commits to the torps. We all know it's coming, right? I have torpedoes, I must use them, because going broadside in front of an American armor-piercing cruiser probably is a great idea. Wrong, sunshine. Bonk. There you go. You're lucky that this is only one citadel. French cruisers are notorious for not giving up citadels very easily. You tend to overpin them. They have weird armor schemes. But fortunately for us, we dodged those torpedoes by 1.5 miles. Like, it was never a question whether we were going to dodge them. Oh, by the way, carrier player died. Shocker. It's almost like you should probably support the person, the one person that's keeping everybody from running over you. Just saying. Pay attention, folks. If you're in a carrier, support the weak side if you can. We had a destroyer on the left side, the carrier spawned on the left side, and everybody was on the left side. My side, I had a Queen Elizabeth, and he died 30 seconds into the game. So it's just been me this whole time against most of the enemy team. And considering we had 2 of their battleships over here as well, it's not an ideal scenario, I think we can all agree. Now, we have already proven that this thing can absolutely go toe-to-toe with battleships in the medium to long range, wherever we can use our ability to dodge and get out of the way of the shells and anticipate their reloads. And this is where I always try to tell you guys, and it really benefits you in cruisers because you understand how long it takes people to fire. Now here, watch, we get a nice shot out here, trying to anticipate this Pensacola who's, you know, just completely forgot we existed, which is, again, one of the benefits of being able to dictate engagements. When you have decent concealment, you can get away, stop firing, and then relocate, and then re-engage on your terms when they are at their weakest to you. That is the benefit of having concealment, right? Now, obviously, this Pensacola is caught with his pants down. He needs to slow down and turn towards us. He has to get his guns on. We've already hit him multiple times in the time it takes him to relocate or return his turrets towards us and start to regain his advantage. Now, unfortunately for this Pensacola, he never understands the fact that AP is your best bet in a Pensacola. especially when shooting at a cruiser. But we're going to demonstrate it to him as we completely, well, if I could hit him with multiple shells, we would absolutely yeet this man really, really quickly. But my aim, as you can see, is not the greatest, but we do finally get a good salvo there and hit him with all 3 turrets, and down he goes. Again, showcasing that, like, these cruisers do take a little bit of getting used to. One of the biggest disadvantages of the American cruisers is that their shells are pretty slow. They lob high up into the air, which means that you tend to struggle to get shells on target consistently, right? It really is one of the biggest weaknesses. Now, the other big weakness of the New Orleans that gets a lot of people in trouble, and I'm looking at you, Joey. I don't know who Joey is. I'm just throwing a name out there, but if there's a Joey out there that does this, which I'm sure there is, it's you. But no, just in general, one of the biggest things that get you in trouble with the New Orleans is the fact that it is a very old design. It is I don't know if it's a New Orleans class cruiser or if it's a Northampton. I think they're very similar. Maybe they're 2 different classes. I don't know. Very similar, older designs, but they have the catapult fighters in the middle of the ship. What does this mean? This means that the secondary spotting tower, or whatever you want to call it, the secondary tower on the ship is very far back, which means that your rear turret is very far back. Now, on a lot of ships, having a turret that's very far back means you have fantastic firing angles. That is not the case for the New Orleans. Because of the catapult fighters being in the middle of the ship, which is a ridiculously bad idea and was later changed on a lot of more modern designed ships, including the Iowa-class battleships, having the catapults toward the back of the ship. But anyway, I digress. Having them there means that you just don't have the firing angle for the rear turret to be very, like, useful. But you can see we have to, like, this is danger zone for a New Orleans. You have a battleship with 15-inch guns fully capable of overmatching and annihilating you, and you have to time their shells and dodge by either slowing down and speeding up, and that's why you've got to run propulsion mod on this ship. It's got a good enough rudder shift that you can dodge a lot of shells, but you have to try and use the propulsion mod to slow you down, stop, juke shells out. There you can see we get citadel straight through the bow by the 15-inch guns of the Bayern with a 10,000 damage shell, and it doesn't take very many shells after that to finish us off. But, again, keeping all that in mind, the things that you need to take away from this is, don't always try to get your rear turret in the fight, okay? It will get you killed more often than not. So, focus on using your front guns, angling as best you can, dodging shells whenever possible. Try to keep that mid to long range for a long time, especially when battleships are involved. And do not fear cruisers. Obviously, you know which cruisers have torpedoes. You know as soon as they go broadside what they're doing, so you just jam on the brakes, turn in towards them, and their torpedoes miss you by a mile. It's really not that difficult. And then, of course, the last thing that you need to remember is simple. Armor piercing 90% of the time is going to be what you want to be shooting. Doesn't matter what you're shooting at. 90% of the time, armor piercing is going to be the best bet because you have fantastic armor piercing shells. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you have a ship that you really want me to try to play real quick and show you guys, what I think about it? I do have entire playlists devoted to such things, such as our path to whatever ship you want to look at. It's usually a path to the tier 7 version of the ship. So if you want to look at the Iowa's battleship line, you go to the path to the Iowa. Want to look at the path to the Baltimore line, we have that as well. Almost all of the battleships and all of the cruisers mostly have been done in a Path 2 series where we go in depth over all of these. So make sure you guys check out those playlists. And if you like what I'm doing, punch the like button, leave a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, I will see you in the next video.